We're ready to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, thank you, Senator Warren, for being here. And we just had a chance to go over to Lynn Tech and see the great work going on over there at the vaccination site with so many people collaborating to make this happen. And it's great to have you here today to have a discussion on the work that's been going on with Lynn Housing and so many others to address the people that are really having challenges with rental assistance, mortgage assistance, and there's been unbelievable work going on here with this team of people that work for the Housing Authority. And I think we have some people that have also been able to get the dollars. And I just want to thank you for the amazing work you did to get the $1.9 trillion package passed. President Biden's first real big piece of legislation. It means so much to all of us here, and been able to use some of the funds, but the $1.9 trillion is really going to allow us to continue to do that work. So, great to have you here.
Thank you, Tom.
I don't know, Carly, if you
Hi. My name is Carly McLean, and I am here representing the Lynn Housing Authority Executive Office. And I have to say that I almost wore the exact same suit coat today, and I am just going to look better in it, so I really think I made a good choice when I left the house today. This has been a horrible year, right? I think we can all agree that, we've had a real sense of isolation and fear. Many of our friends, our co-workers, and our community members have been stricken down. They've gotten sick. Some people have died. And I want to say that the sort of shining light in all of this has been the sense of community that I think has really come out of those ashes. The sense that the city of Lynn has had for community members, creating a safety net in tandem with the Lynn Housing Authority and Neighborhood Development. The staff that are sitting here in front of you that have worked tirelessly 7 days a week. These folks are working all the time to make sure that money gets out into the community, to make sure that people are fed, to make sure that people feel a sense that we care and that we're here for them. And, it's not a task that we as a housing authority would have been able to do on our own. We've had the City of Lynn's Donnie Walker, who has been instrumental in making sure that the money got to us. Our Board of Commissioners, Laura Walsh in the back over there, who is our chair, who has come to many a meeting at all times of day and night to make sure that we're doing our work properly. My boss back there, who will never take credit, but is the executive director of the Housing Authority, and he pushes the rest of us up to the front and gives us the ability to make these good decisions on behalf of our friends in our community, and in particular the Family Success Center led by Sarah Johnson over there, who has been amazing and compassionate and sweet. And so we thank you for being here. We thank you for working tirelessly for us, and we thank you for coming here and sort of listening to the stories that we have, where we've been on the ground every single day, really trying to make this thing work and trying to get through to the other side, not just whole, but better and stronger.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
And before we get to more introduction, I'd like to just ask Senator Creighton to say a few words. And I just a little bit of the numbers here that you may also bring up, Holly, but about $7.5 million have been allocated in federal funding for various CARES Act rounds for rental mortgage, utility assistance, financial counseling, homeless services, capital projects for rehabilitation of the multi-service center, the Shelter Association of 50 Andrew Street, which is also part of the whole operation that goes on here. So because of those federal dollars, $7.5 million, we've been able to utilize in the great work that's going on. So I just wanted to highlight those numbers, and I know the staff and the team here can clearly identify what's going on with Brendan.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Senator Warren, for all that you do, but in particular during the pandemic. And I had the privilege of serving as the Senate Chair of the Joint Committee on Housing last session, and the work that's being done here at LHAN is phenomenal. My staff is probably in touch with you guys on a weekly, if not daily basis, but during COVID, it picked up even more so, and it was really a safety net for so many of our constituents, and will continue to be so. And it's keeping folks in a safe home, but it's also providing food services. It's providing company. It's helping get vaccinations, and that's something through the leadership of Charlie Gator and his entire team has really been possible. So I know we like to brag about everything in our district, and you've heard a lot of bragging today from us.
That's okay.
But anyone in the city of Lynn, in the greater Lynn area, would certainly say what a tremendous operation this is and how crucial it was of a safety net during COVID. So with that, I'll turn it back to Carly and look forward to hearing from the rest of the group. Thank you.
Thank you. I would be remiss if we didn't thank you. Senator Crichton, you're pretty awesome, and you work really, really hard, and it's true, your staff call all the time. Very regularly, and it's good, we appreciate it. So I'd like to introduce Sarah Johnson, who's the director of our Family Success Center, and she can present more of the numbers that Mayor McGee was talking about the millions and millions of dollars that have been pumped into our community and how we are able to get it out and what we use it for.
Senator Warren, we're honored to have you here today to share the work that we've tirelessly been doing over the past year to assist the individuals and families that are experiencing a housing crisis, many for the first time in their lives. Our office, the Family Success Center, houses a variety of homelessness prevention, rapid rehousing, and supportive service programs funded by both the federal and state governments, including the funding we administer on behalf of the City of Lynn through the Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG program. Our office also houses our resident service programs available to LHAN's Section 8 and public housing tenants, including the Family Self-Sufficiency Program and the Jobs Plus initiative. What this combination of programs and services allows us to do is to be a central location for North Shore residents seeking assistance with housing costs, to determine the program or funding source for which an applicant may be eligible, and when possible, braid funding sources together to maximize the assistance we can provide. Recently, we had a 20-year-old young woman referred to us by a partner agency after she was kicked out of her mother's house. She was connected to the case manager of our unaccompanied homeless youth and young adult program, who was able to place her temporarily in a hotel, and then worked with the case manager of our ESG program to locate a one-bedroom apartment, where with ESG funds we'll be able to assist the client with her rent for 1 year. Through funds from the youth grant, we assisted with purchasing furniture for her apartment, and will continue to support her with case management services as she starts her new job today as a school bus monitor, and with help from our financial coach who learns how to manage a budget. In coordination with the Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development, over the past week, the staff has been hard at work to roll out the Emergency Rental Assistance Program funds that were made available to the state through the U.S. Treasury and officially came online last Monday. In just 1 week, we have already committed over $250,000 of these funds to 24 households throughout the region, more than half of which were in the City of Lynn. And since the start of the pandemic last year, thanks to the increases in funding for programs such as RAFT, IRMA, and ESG, in coordination with the state's eviction diversion initiative, we've been able to assist over 1,100 households throughout the North Shore with over $6.5 million in assistance. Though the past year has been incredibly difficult for so many of our program participants, especially for many who live with mental illness or have experienced domestic violence, it's also shown a light on so many of the inequities that are so deeply entrenched in housing in so many of our institutions. A great deal of work is now being done, especially through our work with the Lynn Continuum of Care and through our other programs, to re-examine these existing structures through the lens of racial equity and to ensure equal access to those with limited language or literacy capacity. But there's a great deal more work that must be done, and the interconnectedness of housing to the systems of employment, education, finance, health, and law enforcement demand that these systems must also be reconstructed. Only then can we live in a country that truly believes that safe and sanitary housing is a human right and that everyone has equal access to it. I would also like to express my sincere appreciation and gratitude for the amazing staff of the Family Success Center, several of whom have only been with us for less than 6 months, but have already become integral parts of the work that we do. They were all able to transition to remote working when necessary, kept up with the changing program regulations and implementation of new funding sources, and have done an amazing job in assisting our clients despite not being able to meet with them in person. And I would be remiss if I did not mention the hard work of our fiscal department, without whom none of these payments would have gotten out the door. And with that, I'd like to introduce Carolina Oriana, one of our intake assistants, and the person who many of our applicants first speak with when contacting our office for assistance, to share her experience about what she hears most often about those experiencing housing crisis. Carolina?
Thank you, Sarah. My name is Carolina Oriana. I am from the Family Success Center, and I am a intake assistant. What I do on a daily basis is data entry, and especially I handled the incoming calls for general questions. So the calls that we normally get is applicants that are currently paying their rent, especially due to COVID right now. People they have reduced hours as well. People that their unemployment is running out, or the unemployment, what they receive is not enough. We also receive applicants that are currently homeless when the shelters are full, or they're living in their car, or they cannot stay with family and friends because they're afraid that they might contaminate them with COVID. We also get domestic violence. We have been getting a lot of those, and it's been difficult because their abusers mostly home with them, and it's very hard to speak with them. Recently, we got a call from one that had domestic violence, and it was very difficult to speak with her. There were certain times that I couldn't speak with her. If I wanted to leave a voicemail, there's some things that I couldn't say in the voicemail, especially with email. And when I could speak with her, it was only for a quick minute or two, and then she had to hang up. We really tried to help her, and at the end, sadly, she couldn't accept any assistance. We tried to connect her with help as well. Sadly, that couldn't happen either. So this is the calls from domestic violence we have gotten. They all have been similar, just like this. Another one we have gotten is for applicants that have no immigration status. We have been receiving a lot of those, since the majority of them that they work on the table is landscaping or restaurants. They can't do that because the majority of them are closed due to COVID. So they mostly also, when they first call, the first thing they ask, is this going to interfere with my immigration status? Especially this past 4 years, it's been difficult since ICE has been all over the place deporting people that have no immigration status. And I can relate as well because I am actually a dreamer, and I have immigrant parents as well. Sorry, I'm getting emotional. So I feel like I'm in their shoes. I'm afraid of getting help as well. But the good thing for this program, immigration does not interfere with the program. So before I get more emotional, I want to thank you all so much for having this opportunity to speak about what we do, and as well the stories for the people that do call and to apply for the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Thank
Unfortunately, we invited a few families to come today, but none of them were able to make it. But Kathy actually is going to share a success story from her program for one of the folks that we invited today.
Thank you. I'm Kathy. I'm one of the FSS coordinators here at Lynn Housing. One of our residents, Grace, she was supposed to come today, but she did not want to miss work because this week she's closing on her new house.
Oh.
So it was either come here or take a day off for a closing. So I said, we're good.
Yeah, we're good.
So she did send an email, and I want to share that with you, but before I do, I want to just kind of share her story. Grace has lived with the Lynn Housing Authority, one of our residents, for 9 years. Single mom, 2 boys. And she came in and she was like ready to go. She knew that her purpose here was to learn things and move forward and do whatever she can for her boys. And she came to us and said, what can I do to succeed? So we were enthusiastic to show her all the programs we have. She became one of our FSS clients, is Family Self-Sufficiency. And on that, in her 5-year contract, she saved over $25,000 and in that time she used our financial coaching and services, which her credit improved. She was able to gain full-time employment and just promotion after promotion. So she's really a great success story. And then when she graduated the program, first thing was to search for a house. So she had a little trouble with the market right now in the pandemic. But in the meantime, she joined our Jobs Plus program, which is a program that allows you to save even more money and find employment for her 2 sons. One of them was in his early 20s and then a teenager. So her other son, he was able to do a machinist training program through our Jobs Plus, and now he has a full-time job. So she's really taken advantage of every program that we have been able to offer. And I will say that, like Carly mentioned, a lot of us were working 7 days a week, working hard. And at the end of the day, it's those stories that really kind of, when you're tired and you want to go home and you've had enough, and then there's someone that says to you, what can I do? Can I take another class? Can I learn something else? And you say, yep, because that's the end result. And I think no matter what stage you are in life, you need help from somebody. We all have been there, we all do need help, so it's really awesome to be able to assist a lot of our residents with these programs, and that's why these programs are so crucial for us and for our residents. So I do want to share this email that she had sent over. She sent this over a couple weeks, and she found out her offer was accepted on the house she's buying. And she did try to search for a house here in Lynn. That was the goal, to kind of stay in Lynn, but unfortunately with the market being the way it is, she had to go out elsewhere, but that's fine. She writes, Kathy, we did it. I want to express my gratitude for all the empowerment programs offered through Lynn Housing. The financial support from the FSS program played a great role for us to own a house. We are excited to finally find our dream home. There was a reason those other houses did not work out before, because we found the perfect one now. This is a dream I've had for so long. I want to thank you and the Lynn Housing programs for the opportunities it gave me and my family. The first-time homebuyers class really helped me along this journey too. I learned so much from the FSS program, and I would not have been able to save all that money for our dream home without the assistance and benefits from it. I hope everyone living here can take advantage of these programs. I really enjoy living here in Current Circle, and my sons will miss the programs as well. It was a pleasure working with you all. You were all so very helpful, and my family and I are so appreciative. God bless you. Thank you, Grace.
Tell Grace we were all cheering for
I
her.
will.
Okay.
I will.
Good. Thank you.
So we figured you might want to have a back and forth with staff and hear people's experiences. And, you know, I just wanted to reiterate that we're grateful that you're here and for the work that you've done. Even before this pandemic, the city of Lynn was facing a housing crisis. Less than 2% of the rentals were available for rent, right? So there's an issue both with production but also with the skyrocketing rent costs. And while these wonderful federal programs are here for us to be able to use now, we know that that is not the solution, right? We know that that money isn't going to be here forever. And what people really need are more affordable options, whether it's through the public subsidy programs or whether it's through affordable housing where a developer is going to be producing units that will be at a rate that people can afford here in the city. And so we cheer you on in your work, and we know that it's still an uphill battle. And with that, I open up the floor for you.
Let me just say how glad I am to be here with all of you, and I want to thank you for all of your work. You're on the front lines, making a difference in the lives of people here in Lynn, and that has an echo effect across the Commonwealth and ultimately across the country. My own view on this is pretty straightforward. Housing is a basic human right, and we fight for basic human rights. Right now, we're all talking about the pandemic. You can't turn on the television, you can't pick up the paper, you can't check in on your internet without hearing something about where we are in the pandemic and on the vaccine. And yes, that's critically important, but it's deeply interwoven with housing. If people are moved out of their homes, that has an effect on health. And that's true pre-pandemic, it's true during the pandemic, and it will be true after the pandemic. So it intersects with healthcare, it intersects with education, it intersects with safety. And so I think of this as we're now in a short-term moment. The good news is we have gotten money directly down to towns, down to community development projects. There's money, as you were reading, for eviction prevention. There's money to try to help, but it's a lot of money, but it's temporary. It's to deal with the crisis that's in front of us. My hope is that we will use this moment to recognize the enormous housing crisis here in Lynn and across the nation. We need more housing supply, and we need to think big. We're talking about infrastructure and transportation infrastructure. I'm all there, but housing infrastructure needs to be part of that as well. I have a housing plan that I have already started, and I'm going to, we're working on, I'm trying to get more people engaged in, that would build 3 million new housing units nationwide. And the effect would not only be on 3 million families that would have a place to live, it would drive down rents by about 10% across the board. So helping out people who may not get one of those units, but if we get more supply, more people have an opportunity to be able to get into housing that they can afford. It's about housing that you rent, it's about housing you buy, it's about public housing, it's about private housing. But we need to increase our stock. So what I'd like to do in our remaining time is just hear any comments from you. It's very helpful to me in the work I do. Not only to hear the success stories, because I get to build on those, but to hear the suggestions. What do you need most? Where's the place that with a little change we could make a big difference? I'll give you an example, because it came partly from your own mayor. We did the first COVID relief packages in Washington almost a year ago now, but put too many restrictions on how the states and local government could spend the money. And so things got jammed up and we couldn't give the emergency relief we needed. One of the things about this package is not only how much money's in it, how there are multiple funding flows for vaccinations, but also for housing assistance, but also money just to go down to the mayors and say, use it the way you think you need it most. Fill the holes as you see them, in the notion that that will ultimately be the most effective way to spend the money. So it's this feedback loop is the most helpful part we can get, and I figure I'm in a room full of housing experts, people who are doing this on the ground. So why don't I stop talking, and if anyone has any comments, what would you like me to know as I go back to Washington and fight for more resources for housing, not just in the emergency moment, but in the long arc time? Anyone?
I think one of the things we have seen, and I think the state has been receptive to, is understanding the need for more upstream intervention. Previously, a lot of our programs we were required to really wait till people got to the edge of that cliff to be able to help them. And some of the recent changes have allowed us to help them much sooner. We get calls if people get a 14-day notice to quit. That fills them with fear and anxiety, and we have to have the conversation about it's just the first step. You have time, you can wait, but just to alleviate that stress, I think is a huge help. And we see it too in the state shelter system, where we try to avoid families being placed into shelter as much as possible. But of course, the resources are limited, and the housing stock is limited too. So that it's just
that's a very good point.
Huge barrier.
It's like with healthcare, right? Everyone talks about an ounce of prevention.
Right.
Would do so much more. That's a good point, though. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else has something that I should know? Anyone else? Yes.
Hi, my name is Michelle. I wanted to amplify the flexibility in funding. I think you're spot on. What we've seen is when we are able to use funding flexibly, we're really able to respond to immediate needs. We've seen it with some of our United Way partners, right at the very beginning of the pandemic, where we could take money and get food cards to families who were stuck in the unemployment queue still and just needed food. And, looking at families who might not qualify for federal funding because of their status, and how to be a little more flexible around that. So
that's helpful to know.
Yeah, so I really would like to echo that and applaud you for thinking that way. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. I think we're also, and I feel like Massachusetts is kind of on the front edge of this, that we are beginning as a Commonwealth to understand how all these pieces are integrated, so that you go, for example, to some of the community health centers and you can apply for housing assistance and food assistance all in the same place, that we try to build family success into one wraparound package here. And I understand that takes some real flexibility to make that happen most effectively.
And it's not the same in every community, right?
Yeah.
So not the community.
It's a very good point. Yeah, thank you. Good, I made a note. Anybody else want to add anything more on this?
Could I ask Jeff Whedon to speak just for a minute on the lead paint grant?
That's known as cold calling.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for coming. I think Carly's
Jeff,
right.
could you stand up so I can
Sure.
see you?
We are actually one of 7 in the country to have a high-impact lead paint abatement grant through HUD, Office of Lead Paint and Healthy Homes. So we have a robust program here, and we've de-leaded in the past 10 years over 600 units. And I think that's a huge component is, not just building and having new units to come on board, but also help stabilizing where they are in their current home. We couple it with CDBG, and we're able to really leverage other funds to try to do a holistic approach with other health hazards as well. So that's such an important piece that we do here. So I'm glad Carly did give us an opportunity to bring that up. So big.
No, actually, I'm glad you did too. I was talking about my housing supply bill. You know me, I've got a plan for everything. But I also have a bill pending now. We just introduced it last week with Nydia Velasquez. She's my partner in the House on this one. And it's a $70 billion stabilization, repair, updating of all public housing. And the idea is to come in and do it all, so that it's lead abatement, which we care a lot about in the Northeast because we have the worst examples on lead abatement. But it's also, you wouldn't be surprised, it's water out in the Midwest more so. It's asbestos. It's just crummy. It's roof leaks and drafty windows and stained ceiling tiles, which I believe are just ultimately so demoralizing. It says a lot to people to say, we put federal dollars into this and this is all we care. We don't care enough beyond that. And so for me, it's powerfully important that we do it and do it right. So I've actually got two housing balls I'm trying to roll forward. One is the long arc supply side, but the other one is the repair and upgrading of all the current units that are out there. And I'll keep working with Nydia on that and with the rest of our delegation, pulling in the rest of our delegation on that. So, but thank you, and thank you for mentioning it.
And not to jump on Jeff or maybe Carly, but we just pretty much completed almost a year and a half long housing production plan for the city with public meetings. And so I don't know if there's any input to help what we've learned. I don't know if you want to speak to that a bit. And what we've learned and that we can help you as you're putting together your plan. But we're ready to submit it and see where we go with it. But it was some really great public process, even through the pandemic. I don't know, Jeff, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, and I think it's a good segue, it's a good link, because when we started the housing production plan, it had to do with the waterfront, the downtown, all the development that's coming. But when we started doing the public input process, and we did the Zoom calls, the transition to Zoom calls, a lot of people didn't really care that much about development. They wanted to know about their neighborhoods. They wanted to know about lead paint. They wanted to know about healthy homes and, you know, my protection as a renter with my landlord and issues like that. And so it really became a housing production plan where it started as, you know, protecting from rising rents from the development, but it turned into, you know, what about these inner neighborhoods in these popular areas? So it really is a robust, it's a plan that covers a lot of different things, from tenant protections to diversity, to inclusionary zoning, things like that. So it's a great plan, and we worked over a year and a half to really develop it, and we're really coming to the finish line. So fingers crossed, we're almost there.
Yeah.
It's something we're very proud of.
One of the things that's in the big housing bill that I've got, the one that's would build about 3 million units over the next 10 years, is it's partly about direct investment into public housing. It's partly about the public-private partnerships that we all hear so much about. But I do want to start. It is about direct investment into public housing, and it's getting rid of the Faircloth Amendment so that you don't have to remove a unit of public housing every time you add a unit of public housing. That's like, talk about the dumbest provision when we've got a housing shortage. But part of it is to reserve money for towns that will plan. And again, going back to the flexibility point, money that can be used, if you'll do more dense zoning and bring down the cost per unit, then there's federal money available to help build another elementary school, to help defray the costs that then come when you've got denser use of the land. But the whole idea is to say to localities, figure out what is the best way to spend dollars to get good housing and in a community that functions in your area. And then to be able, the federal government shouldn't be plotting it out. They should be partnering up when that happens. So that's a big part of how this thing, how we're trying to design it is to build on what you're doing here and to encourage others to do the same kind of thing. I so hope we can do this. It'll be a hard lift. I mean, I'll just be blunt. Keep in mind, we just passed a $1.9 trillion rescue package in the middle of a pandemic where we still have high unemployment. And I don't want to be political, but you just have to face the realities. We didn't get a single Republican vote in the House or the Senate, not one. Not one person. And the last relief bill held up for months on one issue, and that is the Republicans, and remember then they were still in the majority, so we just literally could not go forward without them, would not vote for any bill that put $1 into state or local government. So we have a real challenge on making public investments, which means I will say the last thing I want to say to you, and that is I want to thank you for all your work here, but save one little % at the end to stay in these fights publicly, to get online, to sign petitions, to talk it up, to push everyone else in our delegation, to push your housing colleagues in other states on the importance of putting housing high in our federal priorities. I'm pleased to say that the chair of the banking committee, which is where I sit, no longer will call it the banking committee. Officially, the title of that committee always has been banking and housing. Banking, housing, and urban affairs is the official title, and we now call it banking and housing. Sharon and I are trying to lift up housing and the importance of it, and we need you as allies because it's going to take not just what we do on the inside, it's going to take a lot of pressure from the outside to help make this happen. So I hope we can stay in this fight together. I want to be able to build on your successes. I want more people who can't come to these meetings because they're doing their home closings. Thank you for all you did. Thank you so much for saying
So you described these plans that you're working to get through Congress, and they're pretty big, and I imagine wouldn't have much Republican support. Do you think it's realistic to get these through without removing the filibuster, or do you think removing the filibuster is the first step?
My position on the filibuster has been clear for a long time now. We can't give Mitch McConnell a veto over the things we need to get done. We need help on housing and health care. We need help on gun safety. We need to change our laws, and the majority should be able to determine that. That's what the founders put into the Constitution, and that's what we should follow.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How was your day today?
It has been a great day. It is good to be here in Lynn because I'm here to celebrate successes. I'm here with people who have pitched in together from the community health center, from the city, from the National Guard, all to come together to make a vaccination site that works. Their only complaint is, get us more vaccines, because if you will, we can get more people vaccinated.
Great.
It's pretty exciting.
Any last question, or you good?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Anything more? You want to add anything?
No, you covered it all, Senator.
Yeah, and we're here to talk about housing because this is an example of success. Safe, stable housing means safe, stable families. And that's what we're here to fight for.